Friends, the 2025 NHL Draft is in the books, and the Calgary Flames have added 8 players to their fold. They had 7 picks to begin with, and they made an extra pick in the 7th round after a trade. Without further ado, let's get into it, because there's a lot to get into. The Flames began by selecting Victoria Royals center Cole Rashnney at 18th overall. There's a lot to like about Rashnney. He played at both the Hlinka Gretzky Cup and the Under-18 Worlds. He won gold in both. He was over a point per game player in the Western League. He had 92 points for the Royals, and a lot of his production was backloaded. He really seemed to grow his game and become a much more productive offensive player in the second half. Then he followed up with a really monster playoff performance where he was basically a 2-point per game player for Victoria. And then after he got knocked out of the playoffs, he went down and joined the Canadian team at the U18s and was a force for them. So he's a player who's, really good in all 3 zones, really good passer. I think he had over 60 assists this year. He's more of a passer than a shooter, but for a Flames team that came into this event going, dang, we need some centers. Well, Cole Rashnney is A, natural center, and B, a pretty damn good one. So if you're a fan of the Flames, you want them to sort of fill in some gaps into their system, Cole Rashnney is a great way to start doing that. It's hard to really nitpick this pick because, to be blunt, if I were doing the Flames draft based on the players they had available at that point and their needs, Cole Rashnney fits what they need like a glove. So it's hard to really nitpick this pick because he's the guy they probably needed to get at this point. Next up, at 32nd overall, a bit of a trivia answer for the future. With the pick from the Matthew Tkachuk trade, the Flames select from the Arizona State Sun Devils, Colin Potter. Potter is a very unique player. Is he big? No, he's listed either at 5'9.75 or 5'10, depending where you look. But he's a fascinating player. He played college hockey this past year. He originally was in the U.S. National Development Program pipeline. When we talk about players being true freshmen, it means that you go into college after your 18th birthday. Potter's birthday was in January when he turned 18, and he was already in college because he started college when he was 17. So he essentially went in a year earlier than pretty much everyone goes. He was one of the 3 youngest players in the NCAA this year, and he had a pretty good year playing in a pretty stout conference, the NCHC, with the Sun Devils. He had, pretty good offensive output, especially when you consider his age. He was 3 years younger than anyone else in his team. He was regularly playing hockey against guys that were 3, 4, 5 years older than him, and he was holding his own. Great speed, good offensive instincts. He's not big, but he's never going to be big. But when he went to the U18s at the end of the year and played against his age group, I think he really impressed. And so this is the kind of guy that the Flames go, okay, yeah, he's got speed, he's got skill. Good. We can see if the rest translates. But the cool thing about him is his mom is actually kind of a legend in women's hockey, Jenny Potter. She went to 4 Olympics. She won a gold medal. She won 3 other medals at the Olympics. So she, if you're looking for someone to be a role model for you growing up, especially not just for hockey, but for life, if you have a parent who's a multi-time Olympian, that's pretty cool. And so, I think because of the bloodlines, because of the speed, because of the talent, and just because, just having the sheer gall, the gumption, the grit to go to college at 17 and learn and basically get an extra year of that kind of development at a high level against grown-ass men is pretty damn impressive. And, for the Flames, after getting Rashnney, Potter, completely different skill set, but I think a skill set that the Flames don't have a lot of in terms of speed and skill. And I think his size is always going to be a concern, but everything else about the pick, I think you look at and you go, okay, that's pretty impressive. Well, in the second round, 54th overall, the Flames adhered to franchise traditions and selected a Swedish center. In this case, they selected Swedish center Theo Stelius from Djurgårdens in the J20 National, the top junior league in Sweden. There's a lot to like here. He's 6'3", 196, was over a point per game player for a very good team this year. His club won the J20 playoffs and then he went down to their under 18 team, the J18 team, and they won their playoffs too. So he did a lot of winning. He played a bit for the national team as well. He's a guy that you can look at. He's got the size, he's got the offensive ability, and really like him. And as Flames head scout Todd Button relayed to us after the selections, a couple years ago he dealt with thyroid cancer. It's behind him now. Apparently he's doing really well and he's in the clear. But the thought process is he's a bit underdeveloped from where he could be physically. And so I think if you look at the frame and you look at his performance so far, and then you go, yeah, but he's probably better than this. I think there's a lot to like here, and especially when you look at sort of the other two centers they took earlier, Cole Rashnney and Colin Potter. Stelius is obviously physically different from those two guys. He's bigger, but I think just the stylistic differences between the guys, and especially Stelius this year, according to Button, sort of played all three positions too. He adds a bit of versatility, I guess, that could be really helpful. So, you on paper, you love three centers in a row, but I think the variation in terms of the skill sets of those three centers, an offensive, high-octane distributor, a speedster, and then a bigger guy who can do a lot of things in Stelius. I think from a Flames perspective, they did a lot of good things to sort of shore up the reserve list a bit. Next up, 80th overall, Macio Phillips. He is a gigantic defenseman from the U.S. National Development Program. The league has him listed as 6'6", 233 pounds. He is a big boy. He is two things. One, very good defensively. He's a shutdown defenseman, kind of a throwback, was the term used to describe him by Flames Brass when we spoke with them. He is a defender, both of teammates and of the defensive zone. Offensively, if you want to be charitable, it's underdeveloped. He played the whole year of the National Development Program, and I think he had like 6 points. But he's not let's be blunt here. You didn't pay Robin Regeer for the points. You paid Robin Regeer to keep the puck out of his zone, out of his net. And ultimately, that's sort of what they're going to judge the Macio Phillips selection by. And if we're being honest, the Flames have a ton of puck movers, offensive guys that can dangle and dazzle. Hunter Brzustevich, Zane Parekh, Henry Muse, Etienne Morin. They have a lot of those guys, but you kind of need to have the other side of the coin. Craig Conroy, his comment when we asked him about it was, you can't have all one kind of player. And so the Flames are banking on Macio Phillips being a complement to the other guys. But, he's also a guy that, let's be honest, even though you didn't pay Robin Regeer to score a lot, Rob Regeer had that ability, and I think the challenge will be, Macio Phillips will have to develop that part of his game a bit more if he wants to keep moving ahead. Next year, he is going to either Portland in the Western League or Green Bay in the USHL, and then he's going to the University of Minnesota the year after. So the term used to us by Todd Button was he's a project. He's a long-term guy. And they I think if you're the Flames, you look at his size and you look at a lot of the characteristics he have, and you go, okay, can you sort of fill out what he doesn't have or sort of strengthen him up a bit? Because on paper, 6'6", 233, they don't have that in their system, and the ability to potentially play with some high end players, it'd be a huge add if it pans out, but. Of the early picks the Flames have made, nothing is ever guaranteed the draft. Of the early picks the Flames made, this is probably, I'd say, the riskiest in terms of this one. Some more things have to go right for this one to work out than others. The other three, if you're looking at Rashnney, Potter, and Stelius, if they just maintain their current trajectory, you're probably not too worried about them. But for Phillips, you're really hoping that he can improve the offensive game that at least this past season wasn't quite there, or at least the numbers weren't quite there. But again, he's big, and just based on that fact, I think he's going to have a fighting chance. Next up, the Flames did not select in the 4th round. That pick went to Florida. But in the 5th round, kind of a fun pick, they went back to the USHL. From the Sioux Falls Stampede of the USHL, they picked winger Ethan Whitenbach at 144. He is kind of an interesting player. He is not big, but he's a point per game player in the USHL, over a point per game. He won the inaugural Goudreau Award from the USHL, honoring players that sort of exemplify the traits of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. So sentimentally, he's someone that I think a lot of people are rooting for. But if you take away the sentiment out of it, he's also a pretty damn good hockey player. And so he is going to be going to Quinnipiac University, Quinnipiac, in another year, so he's most likely back to the USHL for next season. But he's got some speed to him, good scorer, pretty good all around player. It's the USHL, so obviously take it with a grain of salt, but it's still a very good league. And he managed to be over a point per game in a very good league. And at 144, once you're getting into the fifth round, if you can find guys that are over a point per game and have won awards and sort of project like him, I think it's a worthwhile gamble. So Ethan Whitenbach. I'm gonna get his name wrong at least twice a video, so I might as well get used to it now. But yeah, you can easily see why the Flames looked at the kid and went, okay, let's roll the dice on him. Next up, the Flames went to Ontario, a very familiar place for them, and they select another pretty interesting player, Aiden Lane, who split the season in 3 places. He spent it briefly in the USHL, but primarily he spent the year at St. Andrews College Prep School. That is one of the places that Aidar Suniev played, and he also played with the Brampton Steelheads, where he was a teammate briefly with Luke Misa. He was a point per game player in the Brampton in a very brief window. He was an offensive powerhouse with St. Andrews College, and so he's got some size to him, 6'1", 193. He's heading to Harvard in the fall, and so he is, again, one of these guys that's got some size and some offensive ceiling. He listed as a right wing, but Todd Button suggests that he can also play center. He played a bit of center at St. Andrews College. In Brampton, they put him on the wing because he was so inexperienced at the OHL level that you probably don't want to throw a guy at a center at that level willy-nilly. So, he's another college-bound forward and with some ceiling and some talent. And, again, 6th round, you're finding guys that are over a point per game. I think you basically just find them and take them and go, okay, let's see if they work out. Finally, in the 7th round, the Flames made 2 picks. At 208, they picked, again, kind of a prototype player for them, big Swedish blue liner, Jacob Leander, 6'4", 196, played this past year at HV71 in the J20 National. Not much of an offensive player, let's be blunt about it. He's a shutdown guy, a physical guy, a checker, defensive defenseman, however you want to put it. He's again, I likened him a bit to Axel Hurtig. Axel Hurtig had better numbers and a bit more offensive talent and had played a bit more internationally at the same point of their careers than Leander has. So if you want to say non-disparagingly that Jacob Leander could be a poor man's Axel Hurtig, sure. But the Flames really like Axel Hurtig because Axel Hurtig knows exactly what Axel Hurtig is. He's a really, really staunch defensive defenseman. He was really good with the Hibben last year. And if you look at some of the traits that Leander has, I think you look at him and go, yeah, you like Axel Hurtig. Would you want another one? There's no guarantee Axel Hurtig will pan out. So if you like the Axel Hurtig prototype player, the archetype player, maybe get a couple of them in the late rounds and see if one of them works out. I know some folks are sort of always a bit cold on, getting more defensive checker players in the draft, but I think you never know which guys are going to work out. So I think rolling the dice on certain players, if your scouts feel so passionately about them, I guess makes sense. And last but not least, speaking of players that Flame scouts felt passionately about, they traded into the 211th slot. They traded next year's 7th to Detroit for Detroit's 7th this year at 211, and they selected Yan Matveiko from Krasnaya Armia Moskva, CSKA Moscow's junior team in the MHL. He is a center. He is the NHL has him listed at 6'1", 150. We are told by the Flames that is an older measurement. He's bigger than that, maybe 6'2", 6'3", closer to 180. He grew up a bit this year, filled out a bit this year. He's a guy that the Flames say that they tracked last year, wasn't quite up to snuff, wasn't on the list, but they kept it on him, and this is sort of a guy selected in his second year of eligibility. He's got some size. He put up decent numbers with his team in the MHL, and if he keeps pushing, he has a chance to get some KHL games in this year. And so, again, he's a guy you look at and you go, yeah, okay, I can kind of see why they take him. He's, Russian players tend to have maybe a bit of a longer runway than other guys, but he's a guy that you take, and maybe it turns out okay, maybe it doesn't, but he's a guy with, again, size, some skill. He can play center, and if you're the Flames, again, you're trying to sort of fill the cupboards with a bunch of different types of players, even within the same position. I mean, goaltending wise, stylistically, Sergayev and Owen Say and some of the other Russian guys are very different from each other. And if you draft one type of player repeatedly, you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket. That's sort of what they ended up doing during Darryl Sutter's tenure as GM. They had a bunch of sort of burly Western Canadian boys, and then the league kind of changed to be more, speed and skill based, and they were sort of left in the dust for a few years. And so the Flames, they're diversifying a bit. This is continuing a trend that we saw under Brad Treliving, and really continuing a trend we've seen under Craig Conroy, where he's going, okay, are they skilled? Okay, cool. Is there something that can get them to the NHL potentially? Okay, cool, let's do it. So if you look at the overall package of guys they have, Rashnney, skill, Potter, skill, Stelius, skill, going down the list, Whitenbach, skill, Lane, skill, Matt Veko, for what the Russian leagues are, he's got some skill. And then you have some guys in Phillips and Leander who might not have this quote-unquote skill ceiling that the other guys have. And I think that if you're going to knock the Flames draft class a bit, maybe you could have gotten some guys with more offensive upside in those slots. But if you're also being, charitable to the Flames, they have a lot of guys like that already, and finding guys that can play with those guys and complement them, I can understand the impulse, and I don't disagree with the idea. So overall, it's a pretty decent draft class. The Flames went in going, damn, we got no centers, maybe we should get some centers. And guys, they got a bunch of centers, and the centers they got are centers that have some buzz behind them, centers that the scouting community, the public scouting community, the people who put out rankings, are all fairly enthusiastic about. And then when they took gambles later on, they're gambles that seem on paper to be pretty astute ones, pretty measured ones, and ones that make some sense. And so, as I think Brian Burke used to put it, you don't measure success of the draft with a stopwatch, you measure it with a calendar. And so it'll be a while before we know precisely if this was a good draft or not. But on paper, much like, the 2024 draft for the Flames, looking at the results with hindsight, was a grand slam home run. This draft on paper right now looks like, a triple or maybe a solo homer. It's maybe not the greatest thing we've ever seen them do. It's hard to follow in the footsteps of 2024. That was just a very, very, very good draft, a superb bit of work by the scouting staff and the Flames in general. But the 2025 class, I don't think is that far off from that. It's a pretty good class, and I think they did a lot of good things. So that's what you got. That's what I have for you on this year's draft class. We'll have more later on once we get a chance to sort of see a bit more of these guys at development camp. Free agency is coming up on July 1st, so after free agency, I'll do a video recapping whatever the Flames end up doing. That's all I got. If you like this video, please click the like button. If you really like this video, please click the subscribe button. Thank you very much for watching. If you got any ideas for future videos or just want to share your thoughts, throw them in the comments. And again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.